So the dishes I'm going to be using are made by hand by Franklin, my son. And some of them are kind of funny, like this one. You get a face at the bottom of your bowl. And others are very basic and nice and symmetrical, like this one. So I appreciate that he took a high school ceramics class, and because of that I am using Franklin ceramics in my cooking videos. So I'm just chopping the yams. I peeled the yams and then I'm just chopping them. I simply divide them in thirds and then just chop right down the yam. Nothing fancy. I don't worry about it being super uniform because this is a stew, and as long as the pieces are basically somewhat similar in size, they'll cook pretty evenly. That's Langston in the background. So these are the other 3 yams that I've chopped. I chopped a total of 4 yams, and next I'm going to chop half of an onion. So I'm going to be making my stew in a crock pot. So I just basically dump all of those yams into the crock pot. There's the little face on the bottom of Franklin's dish. Any mother knows that dishes or things that are handmade by your children are valued and special and, you know, more treasured than any dishes that you could buy. So what I do is I just cut off that extra skin off the onion and give it another wash real quick. And again, the same thing with the onion as far as chopping. I just divide it into 3 and just chop it down. And then I kind of turn those around and just give it another chop that direction. Sometimes you'll lose a couple pieces off the edge. I'm using a sushi knife from back in the day when I used to be a sushi chef apprentice. I acquired some sushi knives. So I just go ahead and put those onions in the stew. Some people like to saute their onions first, and that also is good, but today I'm kind of in a hurry, so I am just going to dump them right in there, and it still is going to taste just fine. Next, I am going to add 2 cans of stewed tomatoes. I happen to have the ones that are labeled Mexican style, which basically just means they have some jalapenos in there with them. You can use Italian style. You can use pretty much any stewed tomatoes. It'll just alter the flavor a little bit. I like a little bit of heat with my yams. So I'm also going to put in just a touch of this Louisiana hot sauce. Don't tell Franklin. He doesn't know I put hot sauce in there. He wouldn't eat it because he does not like spicy food. I'm also going to add a generous squirt of lemon juice to give it that little bit of acidic bite to it. Next, I am going to add, sorry, this isn't, I'm so short. I'm trying to get this out of the cupboard in its way. I had to jump for that. So I'm gonna add some peanut butter, and again, like I usually add half of the peanut butter when it's cooking, just to flavor the yams, and then I'll be adding some more peanut butter later. So I just kind of, I don't know if that's like 1/3 of a cup or something, and just kind of stir all of that together. This is going to be cooking for about 8 hours. You see all of that goodness. You've got the onions and the tomatoes, and sometimes I go ahead and I know I'm using a butter knife, you can use a different knife. just kind of break up the tomatoes a little bit more. Now at this point you can also add chicken broth or vegetable stock. I am going to actually add a can of chickpeas and just the broth or juice that's in the chickpeas with my chickpeas. So just basically don't drain them, just dump the whole can in. I have like one of the most basic can openers, the kind that like hurts your thumbs. But like I said, I don't have fancy tools, but I do know how to work with what I have. So I'm going to just dump that whole can of chickpeas and the juice in there. And I'm going to grab a whisk. My whisk does not have a handle because it's old and I've used it a lot. And just go ahead and kind of make sure that the peanut butter is incorporated with the chickpea juice and the bit of tomato juice. And you're going to want to have your liquids come right up to the surface of your vegetables, your yams. So I'm going to go ahead and add probably a couple cups, and by cups I mean like teacups of water. So actually I'm only going to add 3/4 of that cup. All right. So that is now reaching the level of the yams. See, I just do it by sight, and you can kind of see, although it's hard to tip it and show you, that the juice is coming up to the surface. You don't want it to be, you know, too much, or it's going to be too juicy and not stew-like. It's going to be more soup-like. You also don't want it to be not enough juice, because then your yams are going to stick to your crock pot. Okay? So after that, I'm going to add the spices, and let me grab those really quick. I have coriander. I'm going to use some bay leaves, some black pepper, and also a little bit of paprika. So we've got bay leaves, black pepper, coriander, paprika. In addition to that, I am going to cheat my garlic today because I am in a hurry again and am not going to be chopping the garlic. I'm going to just put garlic in, and I just add about that much, maybe a little bit more. I like garlic. So chopped garlic, that's maybe 3 or 4 cloves, something like that. When it comes to my spices, I just eyeball it until I feel like it looks like it's enough. That was the coriander. That's about how much coriander I put in there. Paprika, just a little bit. You don't want a lot of paprika in this particular dish. I like quite a bit of black pepper. You kind of want to get a little mound of spices. And for my bay leaves, these are those 99-cent spices that you can get in the discount aisle. And spices are, excuse me, are so expensive that, yes, I often get spices in the discount aisle. So I'm going to put 3 bay leaves in, and you can kind of see how that is looking. So now you're going to want to stir all of that up, and you do not want to add your salt until after everything is cooked. The reason being is that salt absorbs differently in certain vegetables. So like the yams and the chickpeas are not going to absorb salt in the same proportion. So you kind of like while they're cooking. So you want to kind of save the salt and the final touch of peanut butter for the end. I like to bury my spices, make sure they're all kind of under there, the bay leaves included. And then you are ready to, see that took only like 10 minutes. And now you're going to be ready to put the crock pot out. And I'm gonna just plug this in. Put this guy inside. And I am going to set it to high. Put a lid on it and leave it for 8. So it has been 4 hours and I am just peeking in to take a look at this. Still bubbling. And let's take a taste. Just gonna stir it up. You can definitely see that the yams are getting tender. So after 4 hours, they're definitely tender enough to eat. If you continue this for 4 more hours, slow cooking, these yams will kind of start to lose their shape a little bit, and it will make the broth even thicker, so even more stew-like. But you can eat it just at this stage, and I'm gonna get a little piece of yam and a little chickpea in there and try and taste it. That's so good. So at this point, the other part of thickening it is to finish adding the peanut butter. I am going to add extra crunchy peanut butter at this stage to the stew that's been cooking for 4 hours. And after stirring in the peanut butter, I did decide to add some sauteed chicken breast, just because Franklin decided that he did want chicken in it after all. So you can add those at the end. I actually prefer to use chicken thighs if I'm going to add chicken, and add them, actually put them in there at the very beginning. Like cook the thighs in a pan on the stove, and then cut up the meat, and then put that meat kind of in these same size of pieces as the yams, so that the chicken and the yams are similar in size. So I also want to take my bay leaves out, just because their job is done. After seasoning, I try and search for those bay leaves just so that nobody gets a bay leaf in their bowl, because those things are not nice to eat. They're great for flavor, but they are not fun to get caught in your mouth and have to chew up. There's the other guy. And we are ready to serve. This yam's gonna take a nice big scoop of that and put it in this beautiful bowl that Franklin has made. And you can garnish this with a little bit of cilantro. You can also serve it over top of rice. It's just a really versatile and very healthy, protein-packed stew. So I've got to have one more bite. So good. By the way, I put in salt, probably, I don't know, like a teaspoon or maybe more. But if you want more salt, you can use more salt. If you want to add more hot sauce, you can definitely spice it up with a little bit more hot sauce. But This is Franklin's favorite. His favorite dish that I make. So you can see after cooking for a full 8 hours, the stew is much thicker, and the yams kind of fall apart and make, they're just kind of like incorporated into the broth. So yeah, still very yummy.